You can hear the sorrow in the laugh. It has a hollow sound. He's trying to put on a brave face, but when his friend says, "I hope they don't fuck this up," he knows that there is a chance that it might happen again. Again being the crucial undertone here. These are two South African fans, but they are all of them. At Stumps on day 3, South African cricket was a party. Fans chanting around Lords for ages, then on the streets of North London, and that chanting even making its way into St John's Tube and rebounding off the walls while usually oblivious London commuters tried to hide on the platform. Before play on day 4, that had all gone. A country had slept poorly. They collectively shared an anxious fever dream, which was evident on the faces of quite a few fans. Last night was a celebration. This morning was more like watching people at a rocket launch, waiting for the countdown. They had done most of the work, and they were in the right place. But they also knew that maybe none of that mattered, because sometimes rockets explode. And if you are a South African cricket fan, your team doesn't actually explode, does it? It implodes. A sudden failure that leads to a violent collapse inwards until there is nothing left but a national, generational, all-encompassing heartbreak. They were called the Proteas after a Western Cape flower, but all South African fans have always been aware that they have never actually bloomed. Cricket boards actually make watching their games almost impossible. I spend almost as much time trying to find where I can view it as I do actually following the action. That is why I use NordVPN. They let me find all the cricket I want to watch while protecting me from the nasty side of the internet. Nord will free your cricket matches. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/good areas to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Watch every match with NordVPN. Aiden Markram is so tall at the crease that he looks like someone has created him in a lab. The stumps look tiny behind him. He looks like a proper Dutchman, as the locals would say, raised on beef with chicken as his salad. When he gets going, he bats like an elephant running through a campsite. It feels like nothing can stop him. Australia have the new ball, and not just anyone, but Josh Hazlewood, or as I suppose he is now known, Hazel God. If not the best new ball bowler in the world, he's near enough to that not to really quibble about it. No one has been able to stay in against him for the last couple of years. But Markram doesn't seem to notice who has the ball. He just is in the mood and he wants to whack it. So Australia's last crack in this match is coming at him with the first delivery of the second new ball, and Markram smashes it away. There is no fear or doubt. If South Africa were going to lose, it was probably going to start in this ball. Instead, that is when Markram ends it. If you're from another cricket culture, I don't think you really know what it's like to be South African. They are a one of one. Australia wins, Zimbabwe loses. Everyone else is kind of in between. But only they know what it is like for losing when it matters, while being a team that just generally wins. And not for a short time like what India just managed, but kind of as part of your national identity. On top of that, their football team is loved, despite the fact that they've never even got particularly close to winning a Football World Cup. And their rugby team won for Nelson Mandela in a way so powerful and memorable that Hollywood came calling. If movies were made about South African cricket, it would be on the Hansie Cronje or Bob Woolmer tragedies, or some sort of a screwball comedy of all the times that they sort of acted like Mel Brooks on their way to losing a trophy. Even the things that they have won are pretty funny. A Commonwealth gold medal while wearing whites in Malaysia. The ICC knockout win in what is now the Champions Trophy almost feels like it doesn't count. And of all the great SA teams that ever failed, this was one of the more random 11s to begin with. Mike Rindle says hi. And neither of those were world titles, just random lesser events, amuse-bouche trophies. So South African cricket lives in this collective haunting of their own creation. There are reasons why they have lost that comes back to the method that they play their cricket. But that is not the narrative that South Africa lives with. Theirs is the pain that there is something inherently wrong with them when it comes to cricket. A moral failing, a courage and temperament deficiency. They're the only culture in the world where they have an entirely different C word that they avoid. It follows them around like a red dot from a sniper, ready to put them down at any stage. A Hardik Pandya wide one, their own players, Van der Merwe and Elliott starring. Rain, runouts, ties, whatever it is always there. Part of the inherited DNA of South African cricket fans. They grow up knowing melancholy, passed from aunts and grandfathers, of moments lost and when embarrassment rained down on them. And in this match, there were plenty of catastrophic trip hazards that came along as well. Temba's drop, Aiden's edge, explosions off the wicket for Lion, top edges that just didn't carry, shies at the stumps, bats in the wrong hand when backing up, balls almost kissing the gloves, the surprise moisture in the wicket overnight, and shooters going low. There are days when South Africa would have been destroyed by any one of these. In fact, there are lots more days when it would have been all of them. Day 3 started with them well in the game, but by lunch, Australia were hot favourites because South Africa's bowlers, who had, let's be honest, carried them to this WTC final, could not dismiss Mitchell Starc or Josh Hazlewood. It was a sign that the wicket had changed, that it was obviously far easier to battle. But as Australia got closer to setting a 300 chase in a game where no one had scored anywhere near 300, it was harder to rationalise that the pitch was a lot better. South Africa had bowled their way into the game and then bowled their way back out again. Then that was predictably followed by Ryan Rickleton's dismissal. The pitch had changed, but only for the Aussies, it seemed. South Africa were chasing 282, and Mitchell Starc had just been as hard to dismiss as prime Shiv Chandrapal. And now their opener, who seems to be seeing the ball really well, has nicked a Yorker through to the keeper, which is almost impossible to do, even on purpose. If you're a normal cricket fan, you think, maybe this might not be your day. But what if you're a South African? This is the sign, the hex, the long cursed history biting you back on the arse again. It's over. This is just what happens to South Africa in the toughest games. In a normal match for them, it's runs or a harmless dot. But when the match matters, it's a wicket. But instead, something else happened in this one. Even with Vian Mulder's wicket from kind of nowhere, South Africa always looked composed, in control, like they completely understood the assignment. Bavuma's hamstring slowed them down, crucially taking away his superpower of quick running. But it actually seemed to help his batting. He was jittery and excited early on, but now he was crease-bound and a lot smarter. And of course, he would go on to build the partnership that won this game. A man dismissed as a token, often by his own fans, was leading the charge, or limp, towards victory. But it was the man at the other end who really did this. From the moment Aiden Markram came to professional cricket, he looked like someone who was destined to be a future South African captain and a major star. He comes from a long line of their oversized batting legends, physical men who have technical skill, huge reach, and big power. But that isn't all of it, is it? South Africa have been making great batters of all sizes since readmission. Before, players like Aubrey Faulkner, Bruce Mitchell, and the Norses had to fight to even be thought of as greats. But now, that is not the case anymore. They have A.B. de Villiers, Hashim Amla, Gary Kirsten, Darryl Cullinan, Graham Smith, and Jacques Kallis. They are so good at batting right now that they have even had time to produce greats for other sides. And Markram averages less than all of those guys. He is the great unfulfilled talent. His nation has been begging for runs over the last few years, and to be fair, he's barely answered the call. But when he does, like the cataclysmic epic at Cape Town, it's almost like nothing you've ever seen before. Who knows what happens if Markram doesn't play this innings? Maybe someone else steps up, or the wicket was just so flat that the team still could have got it home as a group effort. But the man who isn't consistent with his runs has finally been the backbone of what is his country's greatest chase since their first ever test win. More than 100 years ago, England set them 284, and South Africa rarely ever made a total of that size. And 105 for 6, it kind of looked over. But they kept fighting back even as they were losing wickets, so they ended up 239 for 9. But that last wicket just wouldn't give up. They fought all the way for every one of their 48 excruciating runs. It almost seems off-brand now that South Africa began winning at the international level with one of the greatest clutch heists in history. And that was a team that proved that they belonged at this level. England didn't even send over full-strength teams, and Australia had only toured once. That win was part of them trying to make everyone realize that this was a proper side. It was external. This win at Lord's was internal. It was all about them finally defeating their own darkness. And it was Markram who took them all the way until he didn't. The ball was at off stump. And on the first day of this match, the TV commentators talked about how he averaged 4 in this cycle for deliveries that were hitting the stumps. Here, he looked anything but afraid as he tries to muscle one to the boundary. But he doesn't quite pick it up. Instead, Travis Head catches it, a fine effort for someone who can often struggle in the field, and Markram is bereft. He shrugs his arms, almost confused at how he could be finally out. He holds the bat above his head as he struggles to trudge back off the ground. Australians race over to shake his hand, and his bat drops to his shoulder, almost like an axeman, exhausted after felling a mighty oak. Then Markram picks up his bat and he hits his helmet with it, staring at the wood through his grill. His walk is slow, like he can't even get himself off the field. And he hasn't even really looked up yet. He doesn't yet realize that there are thousands of people at this ground who would happily be carrying him from this field. But through his gloom, he finally looks up. And I think the pain of his dismissal leaves and he realizes what he has done. But of course, South Africa still have a problem. Hazelwood has just given the new ball to another Australian bowler. And for any other team, this wouldn't be an issue. But South Africa still have the fear of all their history and also what recently happened with Klaasen in the T20 World Cup. Someone in the mound stand pops a cork and it lands on the ground. In their first test back after readmission, South African bowler Merrick Pringle ordered the champagne a day early, and then his team collapsed and it was West Indies who ended up drinking it. This time, one of the Lord's security guards, masked as a cork wrangler, rushes onto the field to clear the evidence away, with 2 runs left to win. Australia have chosen their final weapon to be Mitchell Starc, one of the winningest winners to ever win. Sure, being born in Australia helps, but Starc in a big game is a big problem. The impact and whatever he does. In fact, entire nations can be vanquished in an over, as New Zealand found out in 2015. South Africa have found a way to lose to players without his skill, reputation, or temperament. And when Kyle Verreynne moves across the scoop, the Australians know it has taken something through to the keeper. Any other South African day, this is out. But not today. The umpire just misses it. The final banana skin from the final boss is jumped. Australia have no reviews. South Africa have no problems. Marnus fields a ball in the ring and he cocks it like he's going to shy at the stumps. The crowd boos him. Finally, someone born in South Africa on the losing side, but this time it's a good thing. The winning shot is when Mitchell Starc goes for the magic ball and Verreynne gets it off the toe end of the bat but finds a gap. South Africa win by 5 wickets. A small sentence that packs a huge emotional punch. The crowd scream in celebration, but mostly relief. It isn't the cheers at the end of day 3. It's like a bellowing of frustration coming from a lifetime of heartbreak. An Australian fan in the front of the crowd is not upset. He merely turns around and films them. His team is just lost, but he might never be surrounded by this much happiness ever again. The South African balcony is jumping and hugging each other, all except one man. Temba Bavuma doesn't get up at all. The little man stays in his chair, clapping his team, like he's just seen a well-run 2 in a club match. A short while later, he's walking around the outfield. In his right arm is his son, wearing his cap, and in the left is the mace. His mace, their mace. The crowd chants, "Oh, Temba Bavuma," just like they did the night before. But this isn't just one man's win. This is a cricket nation that, before this, was brought together by failure. They're now taking their entire lap of honour together. The players are all lined up behind him as he holds that mace. But not just them. support staff, family, friends. It feels like a cast of thousands out there. The people we don't usually see when players lose matches like this. And this isn't just on the ground. The team keep finding people they know over the boundary. So every few yards, a player breaks free of the pack and runs over to take a selfie with one of their friends. The grandmothers and grandchildren with everyone in between celebrating their win. It could not be clearer that 11 people didn't win this. This has a proper history. Crom Hendricks, Jimmy Sinclair, Neil Adcock, Abdul Rahman Lefty Adams, the Pollocks, Clive Rice, Basil D'Oliveira, Ismail Babu Ibrahim, Shabnim Ismail, Paul Adams, Marizan Kapp, Bob Wilmer, the schools, clubs, the coaches, they all won this. It was a moment for all of them. A proud cricket culture finding its happiest day. During their victory lap, Keshav Maharaj goes over to the crowd to pick up a protea. He then comes back to the group and he hands it to his family. Proteas flower during the spring. Their florets are pinky red, but there's like a cream color in the middle. They don't grow alone. They are pollinated by birds and insects and the wind. They can actually self-pollinate at times, but they are at their best when they cross-pollinate from other plants, meaning there is more genetic diversity within their population. But like all flowers, they need the sun. For a long time, South Africa played cricket under dark skies, often of its own making, on and off the field. Today, the sun came out, and maybe it's never been brighter.